The afternoon sun glared down on the open plains like a merciless overseer, bleaching the horizon in tones of gold and bone white. Miles Harper stood on the porch of his ranch house, hat in hand, staring out at the dying land that had once thrived beneath his care. Wind stirred the brittle grass and rattled the dry stalks of corn. Even the windmill at the far end of the property had gone still, its blades locked in place like a broken compass. He'd worked this land since he was 17. His father before him, and his father before that. Harper Ranch wasn't just property, it was legacy. But legacies didn't pay bills, and the bank didn't care how many generations had bled into the dirt. The drought had burned through the last of the good feed, and the cattle, the ones that hadn't been sold off, were thin as fence wire. Miles rubbed the back of his neck, sweat running down the creases of his skin. It wasn't just the heat. It was the weight of knowing everything he'd built was slipping away. That's when he saw the dust trail rising on the far road. A lone figure on horseback, moving slow but steady through the shimmer of the heat. Miles squinted, shading his eyes. No one came this far out unless they had a reason, and most reasons weren't good. He felt that prickling sense of warning crawl up his spine, the same one he used to get before a bad storm. By the time the rider reached the gate, Miles could see the man clearly, tall, lean, dressed in a black duster that looked too heavy for the weather. The horse was a dark bay, restless, eyes flicking toward the barn as though it sensed something it didn't like. The man dismounted, boots kicking up dry earth, and walked toward the porch with unhurried steps. "Miles Harper," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was low, calm, too calm. Miles frowned. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," the stranger said, smiling just enough to make it worse. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, worn at the edges, sealed with a red wax stamp. "I came to deliver what's owed." Miles stared at it but didn't take it. "You got the wrong man. I don't owe nobody what I can't pay." The stranger chuckled, a soft, knowing sound. "I didn't say you owed. I said it's already been paid." That was when Miles noticed the key. It was tied to the envelope with a piece of twine, old brass, stained dark with age. Something about it made his stomach twist. "Look," Miles said, backing a step. "If this is some kinda joke." "No joke." The stranger set the envelope on the railing. "The payment's done. All that's left is for you to finish what you started." Miles's throat went dry. "What I started?" The man's smile widened. "You already paid. Just do it." Before Miles could reply, the stranger turned and mounted his horse. "You'll know where to use the key," he said over his shoulder. "It's waiting for you." Then he rode off into the haze, leaving only the sound of hooves and the distant creak of the windmill, which had started spinning again. For a long moment, Miles stood frozen. The envelope sat there, heavy with dust and dread. Finally, he picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a folded note, yellowed, the ink faded but still legible. "Harper blood keeps the land. The door must open when the drought returns." Beneath it was a crude map of his own property, a small X marked at the far edge near the old barn. Miles felt a chill crawl through his chest. That barn had been there since before his grandfather's time. The locals used to call it the Bone Shed, back when people still believed in curses and bad omens. He'd always thought the stories were just frontier superstition. But now he wasn't sure. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in blood-red streaks, Miles found himself riding out toward it. The land grew quieter the closer he got. The crickets stopped chirping. The cattle stood motionless, heads raised, eyes following him. When he reached the barn, He could smell it. The faint, metallic tang of old rust and something else underneath, something sweet and rotten. He dismounted, lantern in one hand, the brass key in the other. The barn loomed in front of him, its wood warped and dark with age. The main doors were chained shut, the lock crusted with dust, but when he brushed it clean, he saw a faint marking carved into the metal. The same symbol that had been drawn on the letter. The key slid in easily, almost too easily, and turned with a soft click. The chains fell away. Inside, the air was cold. The smell hit him like a wave. Earth, mildew, and the faintest hint of decay. His lantern light trembled, throwing long, shivering shadows across the walls. Tools hung from hooks, old and unused for years. In the corner, the ground had sunk inward, as though something heavy had been buried there long ago. He knelt, brushing away the loose dirt, and found the top of a wooden trapdoor. It wasn't on any blueprint. He'd been in this barn 100 times, and yet he'd never seen it before. His heart hammered as he slid the lantern closer and pulled. The hinges groaned, the sound echoing down into darkness. A narrow staircase descended into the earth, swallowed by shadow. He could feel the cold air rising from below, damp and old, carrying a whisper that almost sounded like breathing. He thought of turning back. He should have, but something in him, that stubborn Harper pride, maybe, refused. He lit another match, held it high, and began to descend. The stairs creaked beneath his boots. The deeper he went, the colder it got. The walls were lined with stone, carved with markings that looked like cattle brands but twisted, wrong. The air was thick, heavy with dust and something else, something alive. At the bottom was a wooden door. Dark, ancient, its surface covered in carved symbols that pulsed faintly in the lantern light. Miles reached out, hand trembling, and felt the grooves beneath his fingers. They were warm. A voice, faint, almost a sigh, drifted from behind the door. Miles. He froze. It was a woman's voice. Familiar. Soft. He hadn't heard it in years. Not since the night his wife, Claire, died. Claire. His throat tightened. He stepped closer. That can't be. The whisper came again, sweeter this time. You did good, Miles, now open it. Let me see you. He gripped the handle. If this is a trick, you already paid, the voice said gently. Just do it. His hand moved before he could stop it. The latch gave way with a dull snap, and the door swung open, releasing a gust of air that blew out his lantern and plunged everything into darkness. Something stirred inside that blackness. Something vast and slow, breathing deep as the earth itself. For one fleeting second, Miles thought he saw her, his wife's outline, her face illuminated by a soft, sickly light. Then the ground beneath his feet trembled. The whisper turned into laughter, cold and wrong. And when he stumbled back up the stairs, choking on the smell of soil and rot, the last thing he heard from below was a voice that wasn't his wife's at all. Thank you, Harper. It's been too long. He didn't stop running until the barn door slammed shut behind him. The key slipped from his hand, landing in the dirt with a dull clink. The windmill creaked again, turning faster now. Somewhere deep under his land, something had woken. And the whisper of it followed him all the way home. By the time dawn cracked the horizon, Harper Ranch looked nothing like it had the night before. The sky was gray and heavy, the air strangely still, as though the world itself were holding its breath. Miles sat on the porch, his shotgun across his lap, his eyes hollow and bloodshot. He hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw that door again. The carvings, the warmth, the voice that sounded like Claire. And behind it, the thing that laughed. The key still lay in the dirt by the barn where he'd dropped it. He hadn't dared pick it up. The horses wouldn't go near that side of the property now. Even his old cattle dog, Boone, whined and hid beneath the porch steps, tail tucked and ears pinned flat. Around sunrise, the wind shifted. A low hum rolled across the fields. Not thunder, not machinery, but something deeper, older. The air vibrated with it. Miles's stomach clenched as he rose from his chair. He walked out to the fence line, scanning the horizon. The dry plains stretched endlessly, silent. Then, out near the barn, he saw it, a faint shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt. But it wasn't heat, it was movement. The ground pulsed, like something breathing beneath the surface. He stumbled back, his heart thundering. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "Not real. I'm just tired." But the pulse came again, stronger this time, rippling the soil. He turned toward the house, meaning to grab his truck and get the hell off his land, but froze when he saw a figure leaning against the porch railing. The stranger was back, only this time. His black duster was dust-streaked and torn, and his face looked different, sharper, older, like something had worn the man down to the bone overnight. "You came back," Miles said hoarsely. The stranger nodded slowly. "I told you it was waiting." Miles's voice cracked. "What did I do?" The stranger's eyes, dark and calm as a well, met his. "You opened the door too soon." The words hung there, heavy and final. Miles took a shaky step closer. "Too soon for what?" The stranger sighed, almost regretfully. "For the land to feed. For the promise to stay buried. You woke it before the blood was ready." "I don't understand any of this," Miles barked, voice trembling with fear and anger. "That thing down there, it spoke to me. It sounded like what you wanted to hear," the stranger interrupted softly. "That's how it pulls you in. It remembers every Harper who's come before you. You all think you're the first, but you're just the latest to keep the land alive." Miles's skin prickled. "Keep it alive?" The stranger tilted his head, studying him. "You ever wonder why your family's ranch never failed completely? Why, even through drought and debt, the soil never gave up?" Miles felt the blood drain from his face. "The Harpers struck a bargain," the stranger continued. "Long before your time. They promised the land their name, their blood, in exchange for survival. But every few generations, the door must be opened, and something must be given back." Miles stared at him, horrified. "You're telling me my family's been feeding that thing?" The stranger's gaze flicked toward the barn. "Not the way you think. The land takes what it needs. Animals, crops, sometimes, people. But it always takes." Miles felt sick. His knees went weak. "I didn't agree to any of this." "You didn't have to," the stranger said simply. "You were born into it." A low rumble rolled across the fields then, louder now, like distant thunder. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Miles turned toward the barn, where dust and straw began to swirl violently around the doors. The chains he'd broken were gone, the lock missing. Something inside pushed against the wood, making it bulge outward with every breath. "Make it stop," Miles whispered. The stranger didn't answer. "Make it stop." "I can't," the man said quietly. "Not anymore. You let it out. Now it's awake. And hungry." The earth split near the barn, a crack racing across the dry ground. A sound rose up from below. Not a growl, not a scream, but both. The kind of sound that didn't belong to anything human or animal. Miles raised his shotgun, though he knew it wouldn't help. "What do I do?" he asked, voice shaking. The stranger's expression softened for the first time. You pay it back. What it's owed. I don't have anything left to give. The stranger's eyes darkened. You do. For a heartbeat, Miles didn't understand. Then it hit him, and his stomach turned cold. My name, he whispered. The man nodded. It was promised with blood. You opened the door before the next generation could take the burden. That means the debt ends with you, one way or another. The barn doors exploded outward with a deafening crack. Boards splintered, flying across the field. A torrent of black dust and earth poured out, spreading like smoke. And from within, a shape began to rise, enormous, skeletal, wrapped in tendrils of soil and ash. It didn't walk, it flowed, the ground itself shifting beneath it. Miles fell to his knees, clutching the shotgun uselessly. The creature's voice, if it could be called that, filled the air like thunder in his skull. Harper, you kept me waiting. He tried to run, but the earth itself seemed to grab him, roots curling around his boots. He screamed, tugging, but they only tightened. The shotgun fell from his hands. The stranger stood back, watching grimly. It's not about punishment, Miles. It's balance. Your family took. Now it takes back. The thing reached toward him, its massive shape flickering between shadow and flesh. Miles's mind reeled. He saw glimpses in its body. Faces, hands, the pale eyes of people long dead, his ancestors. Their mouths opened in silent, endless screams. He could feel the pull, dragging him closer. The air was electric, humming with energy older than time. He thought of Claire then. Her laugh, her touch, the smell of her hair after rain. And for the first time in years, he prayed. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. The creature paused. The air stilled. For one flicker of a second, it almost seemed to lean closer, as though listening. The stranger stepped forward, his shadow long against the burning light of dawn. Say it, Miles. Say the words. End the line. Miles swallowed hard, tears cutting through the dirt on his cheeks. I give my name, my blood, to the land. The ground erupted beneath him. There was no scream, only wind, swirling violently, pulling everything toward the heart of the ranch. The sky turned black. The barn collapsed inward, swallowed by earth and darkness. When it was over, silence fell. The wind died. The sun broke through the clouds again, warm and golden. The fields shimmered with new green shoots, tender and alive. The air smelled like rain. But Miles Harper was gone. The stranger stood for a long while, hat in hand, watching the soil settle. Then he turned toward his horse. Before mounting, he looked back once more at the place where the barn had stood. A faint whisper rose from the wind, soft and familiar. It's done. He nodded. Until the next drought. He rode off down the dusty road, the sound of hooves fading into the horizon. Behind him, the land breathed again, rich, dark, and fed.